All right, we are back on the Press Box Podcast here with Ralph Miranda. This is Joseph Miranda joining you today, as always. And today we want to talk a little bit about the U.S. Open, which is going to come up this weekend at Shinnecock Hills in New York. We're going to talk a little bit about minor league baseball, which is interesting because we've talked so much about Major League Baseball. We want to talk about a little bit of the differences and unique factors that go into minor league baseball as well, because there's always a lot to talk about there, whether you realize it or not. And finally, we're going to talk a little bit about sports movies. We're a family that always watches movies, specifically sports movies, a lot as well. So we're going to touch on a few of the sports movies we like and some of the things we like about them. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of the Press Box Podcast coming at you right now. So welcome back to episode 22 of the Press Box Podcast, and we're going to start with a little bit of U.S. Open golf talk since that is happening this coming weekend, starting Thursday. And we have the U.S. Open at Shinnecock Hills this year in Southampton, New York. And the last time they had it there was when, you said?
2004.
Okay, 2004. And the winner of that year?
Retief Goosen.
Okay, Retief Goosen. I'm not totally sure if he'll be in the field this year. He may or may not be.
I doubt it. Well, let's see. No, his 10-year exemption would have run out. That's right.
But speaking of 10-year exemption, it's going to be Tiger's 10-year anniversary since his last not only U.S. Open victory, but major victory in 2008 at Torrey Pines. So that's obviously, I think, the main storyline going in there. What are your initial thoughts on that?
Well, anytime Tiger Woods plays in a major, that's the main story, especially now since he's making a comeback, trying to regain the form that he had before all his injuries and personal trials and tribulations. Going back to Shinnecock Hills, it has a little bit of a history. 2004, it was played there. Retief Goosen ended up winning by 2 strokes over the runner-up Phil Mickelson. Mickelson, if you remember, was coming off his Masters victory that year in 2004 and had a chance to win the U.S. Open and win the first 2 legs of the Grand Slam, but he couldn't get it done, finishing 2 strokes behind Retief Goosen. In 2006, of course, that wasn't at Shinnecock Hills; it was at Wingfoot. Right. But Mickelson actually had the lead going into the 18th hole on Sunday, right? Double bogeyed the 18th by pulling out a driver when he didn't really need to do that, and it allowed Jeff Ogilvy to win the U.S. Open. So Phil Mickelson has a love-hate relationship not only with the U.S. Open but also with Shinnecock Hills. So it'll be interesting to see how he performs since he missed last year's U.S. Open by attending his daughter's high school graduation. But you mentioned Tiger Woods, and obviously he's the focus of this major for a lot of reasons. You touched on a couple of them. He hasn't won a major since 2008, which was the U.S. Open. That was 10 years ago. Theoretically, this is the last year of his 10-year exemption from winning that major. And ironically, the U.S. Open is the only major that doesn't carry a pseudo-lifetime exemption. The Masters and the PGA have lifetime exemptions. The British Open, I think, once you win one, you're allowed to compete till you're like 60. So that really is a lifetime exemption. But it'll be interesting to see if Tiger does not win, what happens next year. There are a lot of ways he can qualify, world ranking, all that sort of stuff. But yeah, you're right. He will be the focus along with Mickelson because he's trying to complete the career Grand Slam.
So I mean, those 2 guys obviously are veterans on tour. What do you think about any of these younger guys that you like this weekend? You think this is the time that Ricky Fowler breaks through and wins a major? Or?
You know, that's a really good question. Ricky Fowler. The media is touting him as a guy that can win majors. And Ricky Fowler has won the Players' Championship. He's won, I think, a couple other tournaments. I know he won the Wells Fargo at Quail Hollow a few years ago. But there's something about Ricky Fowler that he just can't seem to close the deal. I mean, he plays very well. He has some really good rounds. But when it comes to Sunday and the pressure's on, he just cannot seem to close the deal. I would put him probably middle of the pack when it comes to these younger guys that are on tour. Jordan Spieth has proven that he can win. He's won 3 majors. Justin Thomas broke through with his first major last year, winning the PGA. Jason Day has won a PGA. Dustin Johnson finally won the U.S. Open a couple years ago. Brooks Koepka won the U.S. Open last year. He's the defending champion. All these guys are young guys. Rory McIlroy, who's only just about 5 or 6 days younger than you, has won 4 majors. So Ricky Fowler, I don't really put him in that class because he has not been able to show me that he can close the deal on a Sunday in a major. He did it at the Players. The Players is considered kind of the 5th major. So you got to give him credit for that. But until he can come through in one of the actual majors, I don't see Ricky Fowler as being the guy. I'll tell you the guy that I think is playing the best right now, since I follow it quite a bit, is Justin Rose. I mean, two weeks ago, he pretty much tore up the field at the Fort Worth Open. He was putting on a clinic of ball striking on that one, and he played very well last week at the Memorial. So his game seems to be on par right now. And Tiger, Tiger, he even said it himself. He is striking the ball better than he ever has. He just cannot seem to get putts to go down. If Tiger strikes the ball this week the way he did at the Memorial, and he can even make half the putts that he didn't make in the Memorial, I think he's going to be a factor, as strange as that sounds.
Yeah, I'm looking at right now some of the recent odds they have here. Dustin Johnson's favored at 9-1 right now. Tiger's at 16-1. Fowler's at 17-1. You've got Spieth and McIlroy at 11-1.
Right.
So I think those are the kind of the consensus guys. You have Justin Thomas up there at 14-1. Your guy Justin Rose at 20-1.
20-1.
Mickelson at 28-1. And you kind of get down into some of these. I guess you consider them underdogs, but I'm looking forward to it. U.S. Open's always fun. A lot of good memories. I remember us watching the 2010 U.S. Open at Pebble Beach. Because we had actually played golf that day, and we taped it, right? Taped the Saturday round where Tiger shot, I think, like 65 or 66.
Right.
And we were fast forward. We didn't look at the score all day. We were fast forwarding through, and that was really fun. And then of course, Sunday he couldn't close the deal, and all he really had to do was shoot 1 under or even par to win the tournament. But that was fun. And then in 2007, he battled Angel Cabrera at,
right. Southern Hills, wasn't it?
Of course, in Pennsylvania or Philadelphia.
Oakmont. Yeah, that's
right. I couldn't win that one, but the U.S. Open always is always some fun memories there, and it should be a great tournament.
Well, we talked a little bit about that on a previous show. The U.S. Open, I think, is one of the tougher tournaments to win, and actually Rory McIlroy came out and made an interesting statement this past week. He said that, quote, "I think the USGA thinks we're better than we are," unquote. And what he meant by that was, they seem to want to lengthen the courses, make the fairways more narrow, make the rough very unforgiving. And he said, hey, he says, in one tournament, like last year, the winner was like 16 under. So now they're trying to bring the scores back down. When the scores are real high, then they try to make it a little bit easier. He said, hey, just put it out there, make it where you have to put the ball in the fairway. You're not gonna be totally penalized if you put it in the rough, and let us play golf. And I think that's really the way it should be. But obviously the U.S. Open has always put a premium on putting the ball in the fairway, because if you put the ball in the rough, not only do you have a difficult lie, you usually have difficult angles, and it's very hard to stop the ball on those undulating greens. So it should be an interesting tournament. And I don't agree with Dustin Johnson being the favorite. I know he broke through and won it a couple years ago, but there's something about that guy too, that he just does not seem to be able to make pressure putts when he has to. And I personally think that, Jordan Spieth, even though he's struggling this year in putting, his putting has been horrendous this year. And prior to this year, he was considered maybe the best putter on the PGA Tour. But he's got that killer instinct. He's the closest to Tiger Woods that I've seen that has that killer instinct when the championship is on the line. These other guys, I mean, they're all good, great players, but they just don't seem to have that killer instinct when they can close the deal. So I think it's a wide open tournament this year. I don't think there's anybody that you can say, hey, watch out for this guy. He looks like he's going to dominate the thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like kind of what you're saying about the scoring. I like the U.S. Open because sometimes you get the leaderboard on Sunday where the leader's at even or -1, which I mean, that's kind of different. I mean, it's better than some of these tournaments you see guys are jumping out there at 17, 18 under.
Right.
So I kind of like the challenge, and maybe I'm not out there playing on tour, so maybe they do go a little overboard for what those guys would like to see. But I personally like watching it more of a kind of a grinding it out tournament and birdies at a premium. Yeah,
I agree with you 100%. I mean, I think to me, watching a golf, and I watch a lot of golf. I mean, I'm an old guy and I play golf, and it's not very much fun when you're watching a golf tournament and the leader's 25 under par, and everybody's making birdies.
Right.
I like to see a tournament where, you got to think your way around the course, okay? Even if you put the ball in the fairway, all right? Did you put it on the right spot in the fairway? Do you have the right angle to the green? Did you put your approach shot below the hole or at the right part of the green? If you go in the fairway, there should be some penalty for being in the fairway. It shouldn't be an easy shot penalty for going in the rough. It shouldn't be an easy shot. There should be some penalty for that. I mean, maybe not even par for the winner, but I don't think a U.S. Open you should see the winner much higher than 4 or 5 under par. And if you do that, then I think that guy has pretty much shown that he's been able to dominate that course. And I think Shinnecock Hills will be a tough test because Southampton is on Long Island. Long Island is a very narrow island, so there's a chance for a lot of wind if the situation calls for that. I don't think, if I remember correctly, there's a lot of obstruction on that course from the standpoint of trees. So it should be an interesting test for these golfers, and I think it should be a great tournament.
Yeah, absolutely.
So next, let's talk a little bit about we've talked a lot about baseball, and we've talked about the major leagues quite a bit. I want to talk a little bit about minor league baseball, and the reason I want to talk about it is, I recently visited you in Pensacola and attended a few of the Pensacola Blue Wahoo minor league games. I think they were playing the Biloxi Shuckers, who are from the Brewers organization. Right. The Blue Wahoos, of course, part of the Reds organization. AA baseball, but I don't watch a lot of minor league baseball, but it was interesting to me how some of the decisions are made. And what I mean by that is, it seems to me that decisions are not always made in minor league baseball based on winning or losing. They're made more on developing players, seeing what a player has in a certain situation, seeing if a pitcher can work his way out of a jam. So I want your thoughts on that. I mean, is it winning and losing, or is it, hey, we're gonna go against what the book would tell us to go against in normal baseball because we want to see how a certain guy reacts in a certain situation?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's a little both, because the tough thing is you don't come out and really tell the players as a coaching staff that. I mean, you tell them that you're trying to win the game, right? And you are to a certain extent, but there's a pretty hard pitch count on most guys. So you'll see a lot of times where no matter how good they're going out there, a pitching coach will tell the manager, "Hey, this is the last hitter right here," like no matter what, or the guy in deck is the last guy. So you've got that. Whereas in the major leagues, obviously those guys have a little more leeway. If a guy's good and they think he can win the game for him, they'll let him go the distance at times. You don't see that in the minor leagues. And then as far as the kind of game strategy you're talking about, yeah, I think that's definitely the case. I mean, you see, a lot of times in batting practice they have a round where it's situational, where hit and run, guy in second, get him over, get him in. So they do like to see guys in certain situations and how they're reacting to it, as opposed to in the major leagues, obviously it's about driving runs in. So it's definitely interesting, and I think that once you get to the AA level, and what's interesting about AA too is that's the first level that pitchers hit in the minor leagues. So high A, low A, and on down, you always use the DH. But in AA, if the Double A and Triple A, if the matchup is between two National League teams, for instance, the series you talked about, the Reds and the Brewers, were the two organizations playing, and the pitchers hit because those are both National League teams. Anytime there's an American League team involved, a DH will be used. So if we were playing Mobile Angels organization, we'll use a DH no matter where we're playing them at. So that brings a little more strategy in too. The pitchers have to get used to being in the box, being on base, because theoretically, Double A, you're at a level where you can call up to the major leagues at any time, and you may have to bat. So that's another kind of wrinkle that you throw in as well.
Well, I was thinking when we started off, when you said, don't tell the players that we're not trying to. Somewhere, if Herm Edwards is listening to our podcast, he's saying, you played to win the game.
Right, absolutely.
No, but that's a good point. And the reason I bring all this up is that, I noticed one of the games I was watching, I think it was the 7th inning, and the game was 0-0. And the Wahoos had runners on first and second with one out. And one of the players came up who did not have a very good batting average for the season, and he had been struggling this day. And I was thinking to myself watching the game, one, would you pinch hit for the guy in that situation? Or two, would you have him bunt those guys over into scoring position? Now you've got runners on second and third, no force play for a double play, and a chance to bring him in. But they didn't do that. So I guess my question is, am I correct in that thinking, or even in the major leagues, do you think they would have let that situation play out the way it was? Or was that even a thought, you think, in that situation?
I think in this situation that you're referencing, it wasn't really a thought because, kind of like you said, you want to see these guys in those type of situations, like trying to get runners in.
Right.
And I think the major leagues, too, is a little different because guys have established roles where if you're a third baseman, power guy, okay, you're going to try to knock those runs in. If you're a utility infielder, kind of can do some different things, you may try to bunt him. In minor leagues, you're still trying to find your role a little bit in terms of what you can do. You want to see him in as many situations as possible. And I think the one you're referencing, they're just going to let him hit away and see what happens.
Right.
In terms of pitch hitting, you don't see that as much in the minor leagues, just unless there's a double switch, because a lot of teams will double switch when the pitchers are hitting, especially when relief pitchers are about to hit. Because if you have guys in the bench, you'll go ahead and double switch and kind of move that pitcher spot around in the order and try to avoid relief pitchers hitting in the minor leagues, because the relief pitchers only been hit a lot in the big league. So you obviously want to get a bat in there to do that. But just in terms of just guys pinch hitting for other position players, you don't see that a lot.
Now, do you think you may have touched on this a little bit before, but you talked about the pitchers and the hard pitch counts. Do you think in minor league baseball there is somewhat of a longer leash on pitchers? And what I mean by that is that obviously the starter, if he's going well, when he butts up against that pitch count, he's done. But if he's struggling early on, do you think they let him go a little bit just to see if he can work himself out of a jam, more so maybe than you would in a major league game, and vice versa? Even on the back end, when your bullpen gets engaged, do you think they let those guys go a little bit because they're trying to see, hey, how does this guy react in a pressure situation?
Yeah, I think starters do have a longer list, but then again, there's a total pitch count and then there's an inning pitch count. So if a guy's in the first inning, it may be 40 pitches. So if even if it's only 2-0, but the guy's run base and he's up close to 40 pitches, they'll get somebody up and say, hey, we don't want this guy to go over 40 pitches in the first inning. They'll take him out no matter what.
Right.
Say he gives up 4 runs in the first and he throws maybe 27, 28 pitches. They'll usually let him keep pitching and try to get to his pitch count just because A, they don't want to burn the bullpen as much.
Right.
And B, like you said,
they want to see how they react.
They want to see how they react. Yeah, absolutely.
And obviously, teams in the minor league level, they carry more pitchers than a major league team would too, as well, right? Usually,
not necessarily. Not. I mean, it's still a 25-man roster.
Okay, all right.
I think the thing that's a little different is in the major leagues, if you have a situation where you've burned through your bullpen quite a bit in a series, you can always call somebody up from AAA. You can kind of move guys up and down a little more. In the minor leagues, you don't see a lot of player movement unless it's just a promotion or demotion, like a guy's dominating single A, okay, we'll get called up.
Right.
But it's not just a quick, hey, we need an arm, let's call the guy up for
Right.
a few days and send him back down. It's not
Right.
so much of that. So you want to try to conserve your bullpen as much as possible.
It's also was interesting to me. I did a little research. You know, we had talked a little bit about some of the players in the Blue Wahoos, and I think one of your players who plays regularly is on the 40-man roster. And I did a little check into that. It's really interesting how baseball's got it set up. I don't understand it all, and you may not even understand it completely. But you know, every sport. Well, let me step back. You know, way before your time and before maybe a lot of our listeners' time, you know, there was a guy that used to play for the St. Louis Cardinals. His name was Curt Flood, and I believe he was with the Phillies as also, and I don't remember which one came first. But the point I'm trying to make was way back when in the 50s and 60s, when you were drafted by a team, that team owned you forever. Right. I mean, there was no free agency. There was no Rule 5 draft. There was none of that stuff, okay? Well, he sued for free agency, and basically that's what brought about free agency in baseball that started in 1976. I bring all that up to say that it's interesting how baseball, every sport has their own way of preventing teams from stashing players or, all right. Well, baseball, you know, is interesting. I was reading how when you draft a kid out of high school, he's protected for basically 5 years. Right. And then after that, if you don't either put him on the 40-man roster or do something with him, he's eligible for the Rule 5 draft. Right. So another team who might have been scouting that guy can say, hey, we're going to take him in the Rule 5 draft. So they can't stash him away forever. Right. And if you went to college, I think it's a 4-year deal, okay? Yeah. So that's interesting. So let's talk a little bit about the 40-man roster and how that works and maybe what does a minor league team look for in a prospect, say, when he's starting to bump up against that 5-year window? Yeah, I mean,
it's a few things. I mean, when they're looking at making that decision, one, it's of course usually at that time he's had 3 to 5 years in the minor league system, so they know kind of what he can do, and it's a combination of his tools fitting in with their big league club. So they say if they have a guy that plays first base or whatever, it's okay. Who's at first base in the big leagues? Who do we see this guy contributing at the major league level in the next 2 to 3 years? Is it a guy we could stand to lose if another team picks him up?
Right.
So that's all kind of goes into it. And the advantage to putting him on the 40-man is A, he's protected, and B, if you do want to call him up, you don't have to make a 40-man roster moves because he's already on the 40-man roster. Whereas if you were to call a guy up that's not, you have to take somebody on your 40-man and move him off that to make room for him. So, and basically, if you see a guy as a major league prospect in the next 2 to 3 years, or even 1 to 2 years, you put him and you want to protect him, you put him on the 40-man, and then you can basically move him up and down depending on how many options he has.
Yeah, and if he's on the 40-man roster, then basically he's protected.
Right.
Yeah. That's interesting. And really, so really all these rules, it's interesting, they really protect the player, because if you're a minor league player and you've got some ability and talent, then your job is, hey, just keep performing, because if you do, something good's going to happen, right? Either you're going to make the 40-man roster of the team that you're with. They're going to either decide to let you hit the Rule 5 draft, or they're going to trade you because maybe there's not a spot for you on their team, but somebody else may want you.
That's what a lot of coaches and staff guys say to the players is that your goal is to make the big leagues. It doesn't matter who you get there with.
That's right.
I mean, it may not be with your current club for a number of different reasons. I mean, if you're an Angels center fielder, you got Trout up there, he's pretty much going to block you for a little while. But, and if you don't change positions, you may make it with the A's or somebody else, which is fine. I mean, but, and like you said, there's scouts at every minor league game from different clubs. And they come to watch BP. They come, they talk to the coaches, and they're always looking for players in other minor league clubs that are already in pro baseball. This is not amateur scouting; it's pro scouting.
Right.
That could help their major league team.
And it's funny you should say that, because I was telling your mom, my wife, we were watching the game, that when you watch a trade, like you see a trade in Major League Baseball and it says, okay, the Yankees trade this guy to Atlanta and for these 3 minor leaguers, and you're thinking, that's a stupid trade. Why would you trade? But going along with what you said, those 3 minor leaguers have been scouted, and they know that there's a lot of potential in those guys for positions that they need help in. So it really may be a great trade, right? And it's interesting how baseball is the only sport like that, because football, when there's a trade, the guys that are being traded. Basketball, the guys that are being traded. And, what was it? About a week ago, we had the Major League Baseball draft. And you don't know any of those guys that are being drafted. I mean, the number one player in the draft, nobody, aside from his parents and the team he played for, probably even know that guy. So it's interesting how baseball is so different from the other major sports, in that respect, that you really don't have a good feel for, who these guys are, because there's so many of them at lower levels in the organization.
Yeah, and the thing with those baseball trades you're talking about, you don't realize how they play out until a few years down the road usually. Because,
that's right.
If you trade for a starting pitcher, and your team's out of it, you trade your starting pitcher to another team, and you get prospects back. Well, it may be 2 to 3 years before they impact your major league team. And if you're a fan of that team, you think, oh, where do these guys come from? Or, and you look them up, and they started another organization.
Right.
But you acquired them in a trade, which, and that team knew who they wanted, and it worked out for them.
Well, look at the Yankees. I'm a Yankee fan, okay? Yeah. 2 years ago, the Yankees traded Andrew Miller to the Indians, and they traded Aroldis Chapman to the Cubs. Chapman helped the Cubs win a World Series. Miller helped the Indians get to that World Series. The Yankees got Gleyber Torres. Right. I didn't know who the guy was. I heard he was good, but I didn't know who he was. And they got a couple of the guys, and now these guys, you see, hey, that was a really good trade, okay? Because these guys are young, they're great hitters, and they're going to help the Yankees win for years to come. So you're exactly right. The fan doesn't see it at start, but sometimes it's a really good trade.
They got Torres in the Miller trade,
I think it was the Chapman trade. I think he was in the Cubs organization.
Because that was, and then they re-signed Chapman in the offseason.
So they got the best of both worlds. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. So that's really pretty funny. So it's interesting. I mean, minor league baseball. If you get a chance, go out and see a minor league baseball game, because it's easy. It's easy to get in and out of the stadium, right? You don't have to worry about, climbing 78 rows to get to the top level. You don't have to fight a lot of traffic. The promotions are unbelievable. I mean, Major League Baseball, obviously they can't because of the setup, but some of the promotions in minor league baseball are really funny and off the wall. The Wahoos have one, which I thought was hilarious. It's called the Cockroach Chase or Run.
The Roach Run.
The Roach Run, right. It's a promotion that is sponsored by a pest control organization, which makes a lot of sense. And one of the Wahoo's employees puts on a cockroach uniform, and he starts out on the right field foul line, and they have any kid that wants to chase him lines up in one of the rows, and when they release the kids, and the guy in the cockroach uniform starts running across the outfield to the left field line, and he runs as fast as he needs to so that the kids don't catch him. So I just think that's hilarious, because you're seeing like 1,000 kids running in the outfield. You're seeing minor league players trying to warm up with the ball in the out. I mean, it's just hilarious. I mean, it was just one of the funniest promotions I've ever seen.
Yeah, and another thing too, we were talking about the other day, is there's some really nice and unique minor league ballparks out there too, if you get a chance. So
yes, there are.
I mean, I was saying, I saw an article where they were ranking the top 10, and I think they had Charlotte, which is the White Sox AAA, as number 1, and they had the Blue Wire Stadium at number 2, kind of right there on the bay. So yeah, there's just a lot of cool ballparks. So, and there's a lot of teams around. So whether you're and they're everywhere: Texas League, Southern League, Eastern League. They're all over. So yeah, I definitely recommend getting out there and checking it out.
And one of the names are interesting too. And I'm not going to get into that because our producer has an idea where you'll be able to learn a lot about minor league baseball names. But yeah, minor league baseball is interesting. It's fun. It's exciting, and it's a chance to watch baseball at a little more comfort level and see the future stars. I mean, you can see. I didn't realize until this year when you became part of the Blue Wahoos that Didi Gregorius, the Yankee shortstop, came through Pensacola, which is really pretty fascinating when you think about it. That some of these guys made these stops along the way at some of these minor league ballparks.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, let's talk a little bit about we were bantering about our favorite sports movies, and everybody has their own favorites or their choices. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, And we urge you to jump on Twitter at PressBox Podcast, and tweet us your favorite sports movie. We'll put a poll up, and various polls where we can kind of get your idea. But you don't even have to play in the poll. Just tweet us what you think your favorite sports movie is. So let's throw that out. Give me some of your favorites.
Well, I'll start off, I guess, by breaking it down by sport.
So, okay, let's do that.
Football is Any Given Sunday.
Okay.
All right, that's by a long shot. So that's 1999, Al Pacino, Jamie Foxx, LL Cool J. Great movie. Recommend. That's the top football movie in my opinion. So we'll go that with football. With baseball, it's For Love of the Game. I think also from 1999 actually, where
right.
Kevin Costner, Yankee Stadium, Vin Scully calling the game. It doesn't get any better than that.
No, it doesn't. You're right.
That's my baseball movie. Basketball, trying to think here. I'm not a big Hoosiers fan. I know that's like, I haven't even seen it in a while, but I know that's kind of considered one of the best basketball movies. If I had to think about it a little harder here, I don't know. Let me think.
How about the one with Will Ferrell?
Semi-Pro?
Semi-Pro.
That's not bad. I mean, because you don't necessarily think of comedies as when you think about sports movies, but that's an excellent one. Will Ferrell's definitely good in that. Yeah, I think there's multiple baseball, football movies ahead of maybe the top basketball movie. But I'll go with Semi-Pro for right now. What about your initial thoughts?
Yeah, that's really good. It's hard for me to disagree with you, but but I would have to say. Any Given Sunday, there's no question. I mean, it's a great movie, but I would throw a couple other movies maybe into there as well. This is going to sound like a stupid comment, but Draft Day I thought was a really good movie. But then again, I'm just a real football nut, but that was a good movie as well. I think baseball. It's funny because baseball I think has more movies out there that you can maybe look at than the other sports do. You mentioned For Love of the Game, all right? The Natural. I mean, The Natural is a classic baseball movie. And the ending of The Natural, I don't think... Of course, it's hard to beat the ending of For Love of the Game as well, but The Natural, the ending was awesome. Field of Dreams. I mean, Field of Dreams was another one with Kevin Costner that I think was a fabulous baseball movie. And then if you want to get back into some of the older movies, I mean, you've got Pride of the Yankees, the story about Lou Gehrig. There's lots of baseball movies out there, but I guess if you forced me to make a pick, I would probably go with Any Given Sunday with you on football. And I would probably go with The Natural on baseball, just a little bit ahead of For Love of the Game. But you're right. I mean, the music in For Love of the Game and Vin Scully calling the game and just the setting of Yankee Stadium and the magnitude of what he's trying to do in that game. And I think it has a little underlying meaning that can help athletes. And what I mean by that is, during that game, and I don't want to ruin it for people who haven't seen it, but I guess I'm going to do it anyway, is Kevin Costner, who plays Billy Chapel, is pitching a perfect game because he's not thinking about the game. Right. I mean, he's thinking about something else, his life in a certain... So he's so focused that he's not thinking of the magnitude of the situation. But when he finally realizes it, then it's almost like he starts to realize, hey, my arm is hurting, blah, blah. So it's really a fascinating movie from that standpoint as well.
And Kevin Costner has the trio. He's got Bull Durham, For Love of the Game,
that's right.
and Field of Dreams.
I forgot about Bull Durham. That's exactly right. I forgot about Bull Durham. Bull Durham has some great scenes as well. No question about that. So there's lots of great ones out there.
And so basketball, Space Jam is another classic one.
Space Jam is a good movie, yeah.
You always forget about that, but Michael Jordan and some funny little, like Jim Rome makes a little appearance on TV. Just some little things. Larry Bird's in there.
Yeah,
Bill
Barkley,
Murray.
Isn't Barkley in that
Barkley's
one?
in it, yeah.
And then who's the little short guy? Bugsy Bogues.
Yeah,
and then
some cameos there.
And there's another guy that's in there too, isn't it?
Patrick Ewing's in it.
Patrick Ewing's in it. That's right. Yeah.
Larry Johnson, I think.
That's right.
So that's another classic from the mid '90s. Let's see here. There's a couple golf movies out there too, right? So there's Legend of Bagger Vance.
Legend of Bagger Vance. That's a good movie.
Okay. Yeah. See,
The Greatest Game Ever Played, which was the story of Francis Ouimet the amateur teenager that won the United States Open back in the 19-teens. I believe it was 1918. That's a good movie.
In the golf, now you have Caddyshack.
Caddyshack, yeah, that's a classic.
Happy Gilmore.
Happy Gilmore.
Is a golf movie that's more of a comedy too. So yeah, I mean, I think golf kind of underratedly has some good movies. Hockey, if you're a hockey fan.
Well, you got Slapshot, which is
an older movie, right?
Yeah, it's an older movie.
You have the Mighty Ducks.
The Mighty Ducks.
That was like a little trilogy back a few years ago, which is not bad.
That's right. You got Miracle on Ice, which is not really. It's a movie based on an actual occurrence, but it's still a good movie.
I'd watch it for Kurt Russell. I'm a Kurt Russell fan.
Yeah, so. Kurt Russell's a good actor. Yeah, no question about it.
Good.
I know favorite movie lines. Let's talk about favorite quotes or favorite movie lines, because all of those movies have them. You know. Yeah. So give me some that stick out for you. And by the way, for those of you who don't know us very well, we live our lives in movie lines. I mean, we talk in movie lines. We use movie lines to explain certain situations. So that's how we kind of roll. But so that's why it's important to us. So give me some that stick out to you from some of those great movies.
Yeah.
Well, I'll throw it out while you're thinking about it. Okay, how's that? The first one that sticks out to me is in For Love of the Game. Kevin Costner is late getting to the game that he's going to pitch at Yankee Stadium. So he's warming up in the bullpen, and the manager comes up and he goes, "I was wondering if my starter was going to be here today." And Costner goes, "For 19 years," he goes, "19 years have I ever failed to show up." And the manager throws out the great line, "That's true for everybody until the first time they don't show up."
Yeah, absolutely. Any Given Sunday has a lot of good lines.
I don't know what to say, really.
That is a line from the movie, actually.
There's so many great lines from great movies. I mean, just the build it, and he will come. In Field of Dreams, when he meets his father, finally he goes, "Is this heaven?" He goes, "No, this is Iowa." That's a great line. Any Given Sunday, the speech by Al Pacino at the end was pretty awesome. I mean, there was no question about that. The Natural. I mean, there's some great lines in the Natural movie as well. And I just think sports movies and great lines from sports movies are just fascinating. They really are.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So we want you to tweet us. I mean, we want you to let us know what some of your favorite sports movies are, and if you have some favorite lines from some of those movies, let us know what those are as well. Because that's part of the sports landscape as well, with so much going on in the world of sports these days. And we're also going to do a little baseball trivia here. And we were watching Sunday Night Baseball about a week and a half ago. And I don't know, those of you who know Tim Kurkjian. Tim Kurkjian is he pretty much works for ESPN now full time. He used to be more just a reporter, but now he does a lot of fills in on some of the games as an analyst when some of the main guys are doing something else, but he's kind of a baseball nut and baseball historian. But here's one that we want you to tweet us your answers to, or what you think the answers to is. We came up with 15 guys, right? 15 guys who have hit at least 40 home runs in a season. They just have to have done it one season, 40 home runs or more, whose last names are 4 letters or less. All right, so let me throw that out again. There's 15 guys in Major League Baseball history who have hit at least 40 home runs in one Major League season, whose last names are comprised of 4 letters or less. Right. Now, some of those are going to be pretty obvious, all right? And we'll give you the obvious ones, all right? Babe Ruth, right? 4 letters. Sammy Sosa, 4 letters.
Those are the guys that have done it the most times.
Willie Mays.
Right.
All right. So those are pretty obvious. They've done it the most times, and they're obvious, okay? Right. But there's lots of other ones, too. There's 12 other ones, because we just gave you 3 of them. So we want you to tweet your guesses to that question, all right? And then another Tim Kurkjian question, which and by the way, one of those 15 you won't get. No one will get. If you do, we'll give you a special prize, okay? Because there's one that Kurkjian threw out that I've never heard of in my life, and I think you have to be a baseball nut to know this one. But anyway, I'll leave that up to you all. Another question, Tim Kirkjian did preface this by saying that he didn't check with the Elias Sports Bureau on this one. He got this information from a groundskeeper at one of the baseball stadiums, okay? And he just took it for gospel truth. But anyway, there's one guy in the history of Major League Baseball, one man in the history of Major League Baseball, whose first and last names are both state capitals. All right, let me throw that out again. One man in the history of Major League Baseball whose first name and last name are both the names of state capitals. All right, so that's another one that I'll throw out there and see if you can get that one for us as well, and you can tweet us your response to that one as well. So, and we'll have more of that. We'll have more sports trivia and more things that we can kind of get your interaction on as well.
Right. That wraps up another episode of the Press Box Podcast, and we certainly will have more to come. Looking to get some more guests on as well. Which will be, of course, always good as they have been in the past with us. So enjoy the U.S. Open this weekend. Watch some sports movies, and if you get a chance, go out and watch some minor league baseball if there's a team nearby.
Exactly.
Which I definitely think you'll enjoy. So for Ralph, this is Joseph Miranda signing off on this episode of the Press Box Podcast.